All right, guys. Good evening. Welcome to the democracy that is on the sports lines. Happy Election Day. If you provide something to our program and don't can question the host, you're part of the democracy. We will gladly serve you. I'm Steven Rabinowitz.
I'm Jay Kaplan, and always love it when I've completed all of my research and then the New York Jets decide to throw not one but two monkey wrenches into our plans by trading guys back to back in the span of an hour.
I'm Anthony Strait. As you see me trying to finish it with a booster seat, because I want to make myself a I want myself appear like I'm at least 5'8". But yeah, you know what? I was suspecting a bit of a quiet trade deadline, and,
Not,
and leading
not,
to
not
and,
New
and
York.
leaving to the and leaving to the boys from Fordham Park, New Jersey, to kind of throw a monkey wrench and everything. And I'm literally like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm looking at my notes. I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go. Shit. Okay, now I'm about to go back and go through all this again.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, this is by the way, if you watch on YouTube, this is the beauty of live streaming and live TV. Anything can really happen.
Live TV. It happened 8 hours ago. And that is Joe Tufaro, part of the official review podcast that me and him do. Shows up every Monday on the official review podcast that is on TikTok and YouTube. Mostly Mondays. Mostly Mondays. All right. If the election coverage out there has gotten you mad and makes your blood boil, come to join on the sports lines tonight. And we can talk about the Giants and Jets first half of the season so that can make your blood boil. We also talk around the NFL looking at surprises and disappointments and also the just concluded classic fall classic. But first, breaking news sounder. Now, the trade deadline led to a pair of blockbusters today involving the New York Jets, one of our locals, in the midst of a horrid season, and we'll get to that in a few. They traded away the NFL 2022 Defensive Rookie of the Year and cornerback Sauce Gardner and got back two first round picks, one in 26, one in 27, along with wideout AD Mitchell, came up dropping the ball at the goal line earlier this year, the originator of that. Sauce, who just signed a 4-year, $120.4 million extension in the offseason and the only cornerback since the merger in 1970 to be named first team All Pro, has found a new home at Lucas Oil Stadium. And then, just basically an hour later, the Cowboys decided to get on the Jets fire sale. Everything must go, and got defensive tackle Quinton Williams for a 2026 second round pick, a 2027 first round pick, and defensive tackle Mozzie Smith. After all of that, let's talk about both of those deals. Nothing else happened, as far as I know, before the trade deadline happened. Anthony, you got the Sauce deal. Talk about this deal and what you think about it in the run.
If you're the Indianapolis Colts, this is a great deal because you think about Lou Anarumo's defensive scheme and the fact that you just bolster your defensive back to a team that is suddenly not in the thick of the playoff race, but also atop the AFC after 9 weeks. Look, there was the beauty of the National Football League. It is a year-to-year thing that you can go from a team that's on a rebuild to suddenly find yourself in the thick of everything. And this is what the Indianapolis Colts is finding themselves. It reminds me of the Rams in 1999 that no one saw being a 13-3 team. And now we have seen the video of Carly Ursay roaming the sideline and wearing a headset and kudos to her for at least allowing herself to learn and be a student of learning the entire organization that and everything that goes into the nuance of running a professional football team. But when you look at on the field, GM Chris Ballard, he did a tremendous job. And look, if you're gonna go all in and you have the opportunity in a league, well, the window is so small, it literally closes for one. It could close from one year to another. You gotta take the opportunity with this, and you know you give up two first rounders, and we don't know what that first rounder is going to be like in the long run. That's going to be kind of a wait and see approach. So it's a great deal for the Indianapolis Colts. For the Jets, I mean, the thing is, you just gave him a 4-year, $120 million contract this off season with the notion that he is one of the cornerstones to your franchise. And now you're basically moving on from him. And you look at the Jets team, and obviously with the combination of the Quentin Williams trade too, this is a team that was already gone from that was bad, that's gone from bad to incredibly worse. And look, when you're a bad team, maybe it's not too early to tear it all down and do it over. But now with those draft picks, you're kind of back to square one. And if there's anything Joe Douglas actually did when he was the general manager, he got these two picks right. And you just traded them for more draft picks, and now here you are back to square one, trying to hope that you can draft high caliber players who can step in and make an impact right away. And now it's going to be a question of what if. What if the all in move on Aaron Rodgers had actually worked out when the defense was really good and the offense was finally able to kind of be on that level and it just could be a playoff team. And we had saw this when Sauce Gardner was at his peak, with the six interceptions and lead among the leads and pass defended. And you just wonder, okay, if you could get a quarterback that could just shore up that offense. You had to run a game with Brees Hall. You got everything else except the main cog that just brings it all together. And now with the Jets, and look, bringing in another wide receiver after you just got John Mitchell the third, it's kind of like, okay, I see that you use a wide receiver that, but you don't even have a quarterback to throw the ball to any of these guys. So I don't know what's the point of this. But but yeah, the Jets, I get what they're trying to do. They want to tear it down. Let's stock up on draft picks. Let's start from the ground up. But again, now you're back to square one, and now you're trying to find yourself. You find yourself trying to draft another high caliber player, and you just traded two of them literally several hours ago on the same day.
And we'll talk about Quentin Williams in a second. I do want to fight back there, though, because, first of all, we haven't said a lot of nice things about Sauce Gardner, probably because of the whole he's a Jet thing and because he doesn't really stand out. And I think one of the things is it's almost a win-win move, in my opinion, when you think about it, because not a lot of players this get you two first round draft picks. Now, this is more of a win-win move than the next pick I'm gonna talk about, and that's for Jay Quinn Williams, who was more of an option for people to think that would be going today if anybody was going to be going more than anybody else. Gets traded to Dallas for a first and a second round draft pick. This is a different type of move, and I want to chime in after this. But Jay, interesting to say the least. The Cowboys are not on the
Yeah.
same level as the Colts are.
No, I mean, look, I'm not surprised that the Jets are deciding to have the start of the Aaron Glenn era be a complete teardown and rebuild. But I am surprised that a head coach with a defensive background will be on board with the first two trade deadline deals, sending two players who have been defensive cornerstones out the door. Look, as you just said, we've all had plenty of comments about Sauce and the fact that we believe he's regressed somewhat. But Big Q, I mean, one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL. And if your philosophy is to run the ball and stop the run, getting rid of a player who made three straight Pro Bowls from 2022 to 24, was an All Pro in 2022, that would seem to run counter to your philosophy, right? Williams is one of the few first round picks the Jets have made the last decade that actually panned out, and was also one of the few to receive an extension before the end of his rookie contract, starting a trend that continued with Gardner and Garrett Wilson this past off season. Look, for a Cowboys team that is in desperate need of defensive line talent, Williams is worth the price that they paid, which is, as you noted, Rabbi, a 2026 second round pick and a 2027 first round pick. Dallas had their own plus Green Bay's first round selection, courtesy of the Micah Parsons trade. So whichever is the higher of the two first round picks will convey to the Jets. Cowboys also threw in defensive tackle Mozzie Smith, a first round pick in 2023 out of Michigan, as part of the deal, according to league sources. He'll provide some rotational defensive tackle depth, but not much in the way of production. He's only played 5 games and just 25% of the defensive snaps. He has no sacks, no quarterback hits, no tackles for losses, and no quarterback pressures. Williams was the number 3 overall pick in the 2019 draft, and he's collected 40 sacks through 6.5 seasons, sixth most among defensive tackles since he entered the league. per Next Gen Stats. His 281 quarterback pressures ranks seventh among defensive tackles. 118 of those pressures have come under 2.5 seconds, which ranks fourth in that same span. This season, his numbers were down as he had recorded just 1 sack, 3 quarterback hits, 7 pressures, 3 fumbles, forced, and 7 tackles for losses. Now, partly that's due to him having to deal with constant double and triple teaming on a Jets defensive line that's lacking pass rush talent around him. However, Pro Football Focus still had him graded 7th overall among defensive tackles and first in run defense, though he's 80th out of 101 to play at least 150 snaps in pass rushing and first among all defensive tackles in run play tackling. So what would prompt the Jets to deal Williams? Well, when you've never been on a team that's finished the season with a winning record, dealing with all of the drama and dysfunction can start to wear on a guy. And apparently this season it finally got to Williams. In the offseason, after the Jets announced they were releasing Aaron Rodgers, he tweeted out, "Another rebuild year for me, I guess." According to folks who cover the team, Williams did speak with head coach Aaron Glenn and apologized in comments to the media, but apparently those feelings remained. In recent weeks, according to multiple team and league sources, Williams had expressed his unhappiness to people close to him. Miserable was the phrase that got thrown around. As well as a desire to be traded. But according to team sources, the Jets had zero thoughts about trading one of their locker room leaders prior to the Week 8 win over the Bengals and would only entertain the notion if trade proposals included multiple first-round picks. Yeah, so much for that. The team did gain draft capital. They'll have 2 first-rounders in 26 and 3 in 27, and they'll also have some cap savings to the tune of approximately $8 million in 2025 salary from the trade, and a little more down the road when most of Williams' money was not going to be guaranteed. Only $5 million of his $20.75 million salary in 26 was guaranteed. 0 was guaranteed in 2027. But a defensive-minded head coach now has both a leadership void in his locker room and a talent void on his D-line. Then again, maybe Aaron Glenn realized that even with Williams and Sauce Gardner, the defense was still allowing the 6th most points in the NFL, so why not blow it up and start fresh? Not unlike what his mentor Dan Campbell did in Detroit. Then again, how much patience will Jets Nation, not to mention owner Woody Johnson, have for yet another rebuild? I guess how this year's draft plays out will indicate if next season provides hope for the future. As for this season, well, y'all know what JETS stands for, yeah? Just end the season. Done.
So if he wanted to leave New York, which is what many people had said, it was rumors, it was not known, it makes no sense for the Cowboys to kind of up the price to getting rid of a first-round pick and a second-round pick. And the one thing, I was watching the Monday Night Football game last night, and Jerry Jones saying, "I have a big announcement tomorrow. I traded for a big player," which is stupid in its own right. And then even his own quarterback, own Hall of Fame quarterback, Troy Aikman, said they may want to cancel that trade. So if you're building for the future with Quinn Williams, great. If you're building for right now, I don't know. I don't think the Jets were ready to go into this mode, but when first-round picks came calling to them, they had to. I think they didn't have to say yes, but it was very tempting to say yes. And honestly, this team is going to be 2-15 or 3-14 with or without Sauce Gardner or Quinn Williams. It's just going to have to provide another base for 2026. And again, the most anticipated draft in New York fans' lives, because that's what's going to go on. Joe, last word on this. Where do the Jets go from here outside of the toilet?
Well, again, you're going to have your own draft pick, which is going to be number 1, 2, or 3, somewhere in there. You're going to have these other draft picks. You're going to have a lot of money freed up. Maybe you can find something in free agency if they have a plan of something that they're looking at somebody that they're thinking they can lure. Maybe, they can have Russell Wilson for nothing. I think
you could probably get paid for Russell Wilson, actually. So we'll pay you for Russell Wilson.
I think it's going to be, when we're all sitting here in April waiting for the draft to come down and wonder what did they do with all these picks, because if you do what they did in the past where they've moved up and taken the wrong guy, or they have ordained somebody to be the savior and he turns out, give him a little time to get used to being in New York, they could screw it up, but they could maybe get it right this time and get a few more guys. But I think it's also the money savings that comes into it of why to do it now with these two guys. And like I said to Jay just before you got here, it's a lot of draft capital to be given up for these guys that we never thought they were worth. But hey, if somebody else thinks they are, then say, yes, sir. Well, how quickly would you like me to get them to you? Do you want me to pay for Sauce to fly to Germany this week? Because that's where he's going to be playing. If he's active this week, he'll be in Germany. So it's sort of like you almost couldn't say no, I think, to those trades. And again, it all comes together in what happens in April for the next two years.
Yep.
It's a very, very tough situation, especially in this town, to be a consistent rebuilding team. You've seen it many years with the Knicks, especially in those not so lean years. Same with the Rangers in those not so lean years. And now you've seen it basically with the Jets every single year since 2015, minus maybe those Aaron Rodgers years.
Do you
now
think
you're getting it again.
Do you think Woody is sitting there going, I want to get Arch Manning here? Because
we'll
which
see.
Again, could be the worst thing he does because the kid doesn't.
That would be the dumbest thing. I feel like I've heard Arch Manning way too much today, especially after that game he had last week. But
and that's the thing. And everybody is talking about Arch Manning in terms of the 2026 draft. Arch may not even come out this year, guys.
Yep.
Well, he's going to be, and again, he will have just like, unlike the other two. I mean, Peyton did the same thing. He decided to stay one more year instead of going to a team he didn't want to go to. So if they go through all this trouble to get there and he just says, yeah, I'm going to play one more year. I didn't have a great year. We didn't win anything. They're obviously not going to, they may make the playoff, but I don't think they're going to do much. It's not a complete team by any means. And if they want him to stay there because of who's going to draft him, it just puts all the power in his hands. So,
Anthony, final words before we go.
I've never thought he was only going to play 1 year.
Nope, me neither.
The other guys all stayed, right? So,
we'll see what happens. But
but he hasn't exactly lit it up to the point where
and he's not in that mode right now where he's going to be a first round pick. Anthony, finish us off.
Yeah, I'm just going to say this about Wade Johnson. I think he was watching his kids playing John Madden football. And they made these fancy trades on the video games. They just thought to themselves, this might work in real life.
When you're taking your advice from two kids playing franchise mode in Madden. Man, Jets Nation, I feel for you.
Can you tell we're dejected having to talk about the Jets and Giants every single year around this time with their record being as what they are? Okay. As the calendar turns to November, we've let Mariah Carey out of the Christmas bottle. And we're going to continue on. No, it's out. I've opened the bottle, so hopefully she'll hide until the Thanksgiving. So, in the words of Avril Lavigne, these are the Giants. These are the Jets. Could I make it any more obvious? Combined 3-14, not good. We'll get back to the Jets in a moment, but let's talk about the Giants. Rookie Jackson Dart, who's taken over the reins of this team since week 4, has been doing a pretty good job living up to his first round building and then some. He's led this team to upset wins over the LA Chargers and Philadelphia Eagles. That's the huge plus. However, the losses of injury to second-year wideout Malik Neighbors and rookie sensation Cam Scatterbo and disappointment of a lot of others on the team have led to another lost season at 2-7. Least loss as a contender. Jay, we're going to ask Joe 3 questions. Joe's going to answer them with the best of his ability. We'll make fun of some things, and we'll figure out what we're going to do. But Jay, you start us off.
All right. So in terms of the offense, this has been a roller coaster first half of the season. As Rabbi noted, Malik Neighbors, their number 1 wide receiver, goes down with a season-ending ACL injury in week 4 at the end of September. They changed starting quarterbacks from veteran Russell Wilson to rookie Jackson Dart after week 4. Rookie Cam Scatterbo, their newly minted running back 1 and leading rusher, goes down with a likely season-ending ankle injury in week 4 at the end of October. Yet somehow, as Rabbi said, they've beaten 2 teams that are likely to make the playoffs and have managed to be somewhat competitive on offense. Here's some basic and advanced stats and rankings. They're 22nd in points per game. They're 15th in points per drive. they're 27th in red zone percentage, but they're 12th in red zone attempts. Their score percentage is they're 19th. Third down conversions, they're 14th. 12th total yards per game, 22nd in yards per play, 19th in passing yards per game, 20th in yards per attempt, 14th in rushing yards per game, and 18th in rushing yards per carry. Their offensive success rate is 23rd. Their EPA per play is 23rd per rush. It's 14th. Their EPA per pass is 23rd. Their passer rating overall is 23rd at 87.8. Wilson, 78.2. Dart, 93.9. Joe, with all that as backdrop, what's your number one takeaway for the Giants offense at the midway point of the season?
I think the first week we did this show, you told me they were 31st in all those categories.
Coming
So,
in from, at the end of last year. Yep.
so
It's an improvement.
massive
Hey,
improvement.
celebration.
Massive improvement with a lot of injuries. So
Yeah.
obviously the biggest part of this that we talked about coming into this season, after preseason, what we saw, what we were excited about with Jackson Dart was, going all the way back to the prediction from draft night that this was the guy, this was the right guy, this is the person who can handle it. He certainly can handle New York. He certainly can handle the media. Not worried about any of that stuff with him, which is great. He's a true leader of the team. He stands up there after every game and says, I hate losing. I love winning. This is on me, even though it's not. It's been mainly on the defense. Losing some of those games. The game he played in Denver was brilliant. The game that they played, where they beat Philadelphia was brilliant. I just think that with Scatterboo, there was such a balance to it.
Yeah.
And again, with Jackson being able to run as well, and then being able to use those other guys off the bench when you needed to. Every now and then you could bring in the other running backs that would kind of spell Scatterboo for a drive or whatever it was. I just think it worked really, really well. And then we all got excited to the point where like, hey, if you get another wide receiver, when Malik comes back, we're going to look really good, because obviously Jalen Hyatt can't do anything.
No.
Slayton still drops too many balls. Theo Johnson's got to get better at catching the football. There's a lot of things here that need improvement, but the offense seems to now have a little bit of an identity. They can run the ball, which is amazing. Again, when Scatterboo was in there, the offensive line has not looked terrible. We haven't had any of these 10, 12 sack games like we had all the time last year. So I think that they have a little bit more of an identity, and they're fighting hard to do whatever they can. And again, they'll surprise a few more guys down the road, but look at the division. I mean, Washington's done without Jaden Daniels. The Cowboys aren't any good on defense. They can't play defense to save their lives. So, and trading out for another guy that you got because you got rid of the other one didn't make any sense. Quentin Williams is great, but he's not exactly Micah Parsons. And so that was a definite downgrade at that spot. So again, I think, Rabbi and I talk about this all the time. For a team that, if you look at, could easily have 5 wins, without thinking twice about it. They could easily have 5 wins at this point, but that doesn't matter. You are what you are. But they're going to surprise a few more teams down the road. They're going to pick off a few guys here and there. But it's just about Jackson's development at this point. That's all it is. It has nothing. I don't care if they don't win another game all year long. People can talk about whether or not you're going to fire the coach or not. I just think him doing what he does. Look, the San Francisco game was completely on the defense for losing that game. He scored 3 touchdowns and threw for 2. I mean, if your quarterback is going to score 3 touchdowns every week and score on the opening drive every week, you've got something there, and it's only going to improve when they can try to get some more talent around him. And at this point, you're probably going to pick 4th, 5th, 6th in the draft. There's a bunch of teams with 2 wins in the league, by the way. Everybody picks on the Giants for having 2 wins. There's 6 other teams that have 2 wins. So, I think that they'll be able to improve through free agency. They'll be able to improve through the draft. And if Scatterboo and Neighbors come back, they don't really need much more than that to be really good on offense. We'll talk. I'll wait for the second question to talk about the defense.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting, Joe. We talk about, Dart's development, and what's interesting to me is I said, early, coming into the season that the difference would be is that and I said it on the show, Russell Wilson is a very specific skill set passer. It's either check down or it's moon balls down the sideline. He will not use the middle of the field, which kind of limits the scope and your ability to be dynamic on offense. Everything's on the table with Dart. He has no problem throwing anywhere over the field. And I ran the next gen stats, if you will, and the difference between the quarterback play from Wilson to Dart was astounding even to me. Total EPA, Wilson minus 13.1, Dart plus 19.88. EPA per play, Wilson minus 0.1, Dart plus 0.08. Per pass, Wilson minus 13.08, Dart minus 1.12. Per rush, well, I mean, this is obvious. Wilson minus 0.03, Dart plus 21. He's actually number 2 in the NFL in terms of EPA per rush for quarterbacks. Overall success rate, Wilson 38.97, Dart 45.71. The only real area where Russell Wilson has higher marks than Dart is sack rate, which is ironic considering how often Russell Wilson gets sacked. And average depth of target, where Wilson is almost 10 and Jackson is 8.66, but even that's 11th in the NFL. Whatever else we can say about what's gone wrong with the Giants offense, either by injury or everything else, Jackson Dart is trending in the right direction.
And because we didn't realize it at the time that the Cowboys defense was just trash.
No, and I admitted that on the show.
No, we still do that. We
didn't realize that they were that bad. So that
yeah.
Russell Wilson looked like the savior of all saviors.
Yep.
But then we realized after 6 weeks that it was the Cowboys that were bad. And so if they had made that change before, so that even hampered them, right? If they had lost to Washington and then they got hammered against Dallas, they would have made that change to Dart maybe even a week sooner. And maybe he would have played against Kansas City or something like that, where again, they had a chance to win. But, you kind of held on to Russell Wilson a little bit longer, even at a training camp, because of what he did against Dallas, which turns out to be just fool's gold at this point.
Fool's gold, yep.
I honestly think it would have been better for Jameis to at least have been in there with Dart to start the season, I think. But then again, that's Monday morning quarterbacking, really, when you think about it. All right. We did enough semi-praising. Now, Anthony, bring up the knives in the defense.
Yeah. Well, before I ask this question, Rabbi, really? An Avril Lavigne reference on a football show?
I've done worse.
Really?
I've done better. I've done more.
We're having fun. We're talking football.
Hey, look, Anthony, look, come on. When he spent an entire show using every title from Taylor Swift's latest album, there was nowhere else for him to go musically but down.
I know, but here he is having to make things so complicated, and now I have to pick up the pieces. So thank you so much, Rabbi.
Hey, listen, I'm with you, Anthony. Just keep moving on, all right?
Okay. All right, Joe. So I'll bring the show back on track. Look, when we talked to the training camp show, and even leading up to the season, a lot of excitement was about this defense. You had Dexter Lawrence coming back from injury. You had Brian Burns. You had Thibodeau. And you basically look at this defense. It's like, okay, this team on paper should be able to get to the quarterback and really be a strength to this Giants team. That has not worked out. I mean, between the injuries in the back half, particularly the secondary, Dustin Lawrence has not had a good year. It actually had a war of words for Carl Banks. And then you get the Giants' defensive ratings, 24th against the pass yards allowed, 31st against the run, 26th in pass defense. And it's just, and with the 5th in sack percentage, a lot of that had to do with Brian Burns having an all-pro season, almost single-handedly by himself. I was at that Philadelphia Eagles game, the Thursday night game, and we were seeing how good the Giant defense can be, but we also seeing some incredibly ill-timed defensive lapses. And you look at this team, if they're definitely a couple of defensive stops away from having 4, maybe 5 wins on the season. So I'm gonna ask you, and the same thing as Jay, is what is your takeaway from the first half of the season as far as the defense is concerned?
I've said this to Rabbi a number of times, and I think I said it to Jay last year. I don't like this coordinator. I
Nope.
don't think he has a philosophy. His philosophy of getting to the quarterback is somebody has to beat their man. Okay, that's what you tell these guys in the group. This is your philosophy. We're going to put you in a bunch of one-on-ones, and somebody has to win. Well, thanks a lot. That doesn't do us any good. We need some kind of scheme. You need some kind of change up throughout the game. You show good quarterbacks the same thing all day long, they're going to figure it out. They just don't have a scheme. It's terrible. And again, I think Dexter's still hurt. The fact that
Yeah.
he didn't practice at all, and he didn't play in any preseason game. And so something was there that they weren't telling you. And I think they're protecting him a little bit at this point. I don't think it was a war of words. I think it was a one-sided war of words from Carl that, saying, I need to figure something out. We need to figure out what's going on because he's not playing up to his standards. Of course, they had the ridiculous discussion today on one of the radio shows of, would you trade Dexter Lawrence? And, TQ's like, well, if I can find a way to remotivate him or I can find out what's wrong with him, no, I wouldn't go anywhere near trading him because he's the best in the business when he's healthy and he's motivated. So I don't know what that is. I think there's something more there than obviously anybody's telling you, but he's still playing, right? So is he, there's been a couple of things. He seems to be grabbing his left side after things, he can't beat double teams anymore. There's got to be a lack of strength there, and it's got to come from something physical. So I do think that in the beginning they started out, and like you said, Anthony, in some games that pressure's really worked, and in other games it's just been gone. And the one thing that everybody always loved about Spagnuolo, and I got a lot of people that used to text me this through the years, used to say, "Man, I love your defensive coordinator because he never takes his foot off the gas." It's his job to get the ball to his offense. And you see him even now with Kansas City. He'll throw all out blitzes and he's like, hey, my job is to get the ball back to Patrick Mahomes. If I give up a touchdown, I still get the ball back to Patrick Mahomes. Or if I get a sack or force a bad throw, then we get him to punt and we get the ball back to Patrick. So the fact that Shane is at the end of games in the Dallas game, at the end of game in Denver, has backed off and rushed 3 guys. When all they needed was a field goal. It was, and one guy kicking from their own friggin' 40-yard line can make a field goal. So doesn't make sense to give the quarterback more time when they have a specific thing that they have to do, right? You play outside, you play the sidelines, and you rush an extra guy because you want him to have to hurry up and pick somebody. Even before he came, right, they used to do it, the game against Minnesota in the playoffs. Why did they beat Kirk Cousins at the end? Because they forced him to make a quick decision and go for the guy that he shouldn't have thrown the ball to because he didn't have time to wait for his number one receiver to get open or get downfield. So it's just a bad philosophy. And I don't know how long he's going to last. The questions are going to keep coming up. Again, we're only halfway through and people are still going, is he still your defensive coordinator? Is he still calling the plays? At some point, the phone's got to ring from above. Unfortunately, their bye is in like week 14, which is ridiculous. Why even bother having one? So it's not like Shane can go and sit in front of the media in week 8 with a week off or week 9 with a week off and say, make some changes. Because it's hard to make a change in the middle of a season when you don't have a week off. And they've already played their Thursday game, of course, week 3. Again, we have the worst schedule in the history of the league. So there's none of these natural breaks where you can sit down and go, yeah, we're going to make a change. We're going to bring so-and-so in. We're going to move so-and-so up. We're going to do whatever we can. We're going to bring in Antonio Pierce for 8 weeks and give him a tryout, something. You just don't have that luxury at this point. So he may hang on for a while, but that's what it's been, Ant. It's been scheme. It's been gone.
I 100% agree with you because I think back to the end of the Denver game, and yeah, the extra point is another conversation itself.
Yeah.
But when you're in Mile High, I mean you're in Denver. There's no altitude there. A kicker can hit from 70 yards pretty easily, and I see these defensive backs 20, almost 25 yards off the line of scrimmage. And I'm thinking to myself, why are you only rushing 3? He needs a field goal. You better speed this guy up quickly. And
Yep.
then also you talked about by the way, Abdul Carter, even though the numbers are not there,
He's
he's
been playing
among the
well.
lead. Yeah, he's among the leaders in rushes. So he's getting to the backfield. The sacks are not there, but the fact that he's getting the pressures is just as important. But you brought up Steve Spagnuolo, and I'll wrap my thought up with this. I think back to that Cowboy playoff game in 2007, and you saw the pressure in the second half take its toll, and suddenly Marion Barber's not getting these chunks of yards, and Tony Romo suddenly can't get guys open and get the ball away quickly. It's not always getting to the quarterback; it's to wear the team down as the game progresses, and eventually, the good teams they keep the foot on the gas pedal because at this point they know you haven't figured them out yet.
But
But
yeah,
if you're Shane Boner and you're sitting back and you're allowing even an average quarterback is gonna find a receiver open 20 yards downfield when you're not putting pressure on him. And I think it's a big thing with scheme. I don't know how much of it is the injuries to the defensive backfield or the fact that you don't have guys who can cover one-on-one with any consistency. But it just seems like it just seems like the personnel don't fit the philosophy, and you're seeing it way too often during games, especially in key situations where you have the pass rushers and the playmakers who can make it happen, but you're not putting them in the position to actually make those plays happen.
and if you
Yep.
go back to that game, that Dallas game, also, you saw Romo yelling at his offensive line. So you create this chaos, right? You create this frustration that he doesn't have enough time. He's blaming other guys on his team that he doesn't have enough time, and they're starting to go back. That's what you need to do. Like you said, you can't. I mean, Bo Nix isn't Joe Namath, but you can't sit back and let him have all day. And those, they made some nice catches on that final drive. Denver did, and that's going to happen. They got two really good wide receivers. So to give him all that time to find them and to put him in the spot and throw it in the right place just was the wrong call, and it'll always be the wrong call. So
All you have to
Joe,
do is really make one. Go ahead.
yeah, Joe, you remember the old school adage, the only thing prevent defense does is prevent you
prevent you
from
from
winning.
winning. Exactly.
All right. So just also one thing about making that change, I think when you also have a lame duck head coach, I think the next thing to go along, it's like, hey, we need to change our defensive coordinator. No, we need to change you and the defensive
Well,
coordinator along
but
with it.
but
So
but it might be one of those cases where because we've seen it and we've all kind of shook our heads at times, which the guy in San Diego, right, who screws up getting them in
Bailey,
the
yeah.
playoffs, and then he goes and fires the two coordinators, and you're like, no, it was the other guy that you need to get rid of. So who knows how it's going to turn out? We're not always can't always predict how that's going to work. So
All right, so just quickly, when you look at these next 8 games coming in again, the bye week being week 14, it's kind of funny when you look at the next 4 games. It's a pretty good. They're all playoff contenders. At Chicago, home for Green Bay, at Detroit, at New England on Monday night, and then you go past the bye, and then it's much easier. Mariota, Washington at home, Minnesota at home, at whatever the Raiders are currently now, and home for Dallas. So you look at being a spoiler and then building something going into 2026. And you also look at the fact that this is a job interview for Brian Daboll in the final 8 weeks, Joe. What are you looking for mostly coming up after this week 10?
again, you just can't. For me, I just can't at this point put it on wins and losses. It's Jackson Dart and how good he does. I mean, the fact that they were in Denver and they had whatever amount of seconds left, and he brought them all the way down the field, and he seems to have that factor, right? Like nobody else gets that pass interference call in the end zone with 13 seconds to go, except maybe Kansas City. And all of a sudden things start to go the Giants' way. And you go, oh, okay, maybe he's a little bit of that guy where he makes things happen. He's smart enough to figure these things out. And to me, it's just his development. I'd like to see, hey, you could still make a case for them to get to 6 wins, get to 8 wins even. Because even all those teams you just mentioned, they're all beatable. I mean,
Oh,
Chicago,
every one of them. There's no
Chicago,
game right now on that schedule I think would be impossible for the Giants to win.
I
No.
mean, going to Detroit's probably tough, but like some of those,
Minnesota just did it, so
yeah. No, I'm saying some of those teams, you're going to look at and you're going to say, okay, I don't expect much. What's been nice as a Giant fan, as just the fan of the team, and Rabbi, you and I talked about this. It had come to a point where I would put on a game and I'd put them up in the corner and watch it till about halftime and then go, all right, shut that off. I don't want to watch that anymore, and never watch a replay again. To this point where I'm saying, oh, what time do they play Sunday? They play at 10, they play at 1 o'clock, where I want to see that first drive by Jackson Dart. I want to see him play. I wanted to see Scadaboo play. You wanted to see how the defense reacted to certain things. So they have become relevant in the minds of fans again. Look, there's always going to be fans from other teams in the building, because as I told you guys, I live on the West Coast. I still have my season tickets. If you guys want to buy them from me, you're more than welcome to. But when some San Francisco fan, 15 minutes after the schedule came out, paid $550 per ticket for a $123 ticket, I'm going to sell it to them. And I'm not going to apologize to anybody for that. And 15 minutes later, San Diego Charger fan paid $400 a ticket. So that's what's going to happen. Guys want to see the team that they root for, even though they live in a different place. That's what this is. This isn't people traveling. They go, oh, they travel so well. Guess what? Nobody bought my Green Bay tickets until Micah Parsons got traded. They sold the next day. And I said that to Rabbi. I go, oh, I'm guessing here go my Green Bay tickets because Micah Parsons got traded. But again, it's not people flying in from Green Bay and going to New York. These are people that live there that have always rooted for these teams, that have have moved to a different place. Now that you just elected the mayor, you're elected. Maybe that won't happen as much, but we'll see how that all takes. I may have to give up my season tickets because that's a capitalist thing. So.
Okay. Well, while we continue on there, by the way, as we move on, I can't believe that you found a Los Angeles Charger fan. That's what really shocks me about this whole segment. Again, I did not know they existed, and I still don't believe it now. So
no, I still believe they all still reside in San Diego.
They probably do, but I still don't believe
I was in San Diego this weekend because I was at the Breeders' Cup. I sent you guys
awesome.
And on Sunday morning, there's no football on. Nobody's watching it. Nobody cares. I couldn't watch any game on TV because there's no Chargers. There's no local team anymore. I put on Odyssey to listen to the Giants game, and it cut me off. It said, you're not in an NFL city. You can't.
Wow.
And that's it. So there's nobody in San Diego that gives a hoot about the Chargers.
Thanks, San Diego. All right. Now to the other part of our doubleheader of misery, back to the New York Jets. They're the one that won 2 weeks ago. Yeah, we all should have. Pretty insane miracle victory of the Cincinnati Bengals. And yes, I know their defense is worse than the Cowboys, but winning a game with what they had is pretty impressive. Other 7 games, though, just a cacophony of misery. QB Justin Fields, a lot more trick than treat, even though I know Halloween was a few days ago. But the 1-7 team, 1-7 team called Gangrene. We talked about them before. Let's talk about them a little more before we head out to around the NFL. Jay, start us off.
Yeah. So inconsistency. Thy name is Jets offense. They've had 4 games where they topped 375 yards of total offense, including a season high 502 in that week 8 win over the Bengals, and 4 games where they've had less than 275, including a season low of 82 in their week 6 loss to the Broncos. The NFL average, 329.4 yards per game. They've had 5 games with at least 21 points, topping 30 twice, and 3 games with less than 14 points. The NFL average, 23.4 points per game. They either run the ball really well or really poorly. 4 games of 140 yards, 4 games of 100 yards or less, and don't get me started on their utter inability to consistently throw the football unless they're playing a defense that hasn't shown it can actually stop the forward pass. Check out the basic and advanced stats and rankings. They are 25th in points per game, 27th in points per drive, 16th in red zone touchdown percentage, but 31st in red zone attempts. Their score percentage, 22nd. Third down conversion rate, 27th. They're 27th in total yards per game, 29th in yards per play, 32nd in passing yards per game, 27th in yards per attempt, They are third in the NFL in rushing yards per game and number one in average yards per carry. Their offensive success rate, 18th. EPA per play, 27. Per rush, 21. Per pass, 24. Their passer rating of 88.4 is 22nd. Justin Fields alone, amazingly enough, has a 92.6 passer rating. But again, the inconsistency. 3 games above 100, one at 99, 3 below 60, including 1 below 40. Yeah, that's the negative 10-yard passing game. So, Joe, with all of that as backdrop, what's your number one takeaway from the Jets offense at the midpoint of the season?
That they don't have one. They there's no identity there that says,
Yeah.
okay, we're going to impose our will on you. It all depends on what the other team does poorly or can't stop for some reason. Like you said, in those games where they ran for a lot, they threw for nothing because they know they just forced Justin Fields to beat them. So you say, okay, we're
And
going
he can't.
to force you to throw the ball whenever you have to. We'll give up some yards on the ground because you're going to run it 60, 70 times. Of course, we're going to get some yardage, but that's what they are. They just have no identity at this point, except that they don't have a quarterback. Their identity is the owner doesn't like the quarterback. The coach doesn't like the quarterback. The backup quarterback is a backup quarterback. So he'll play good here and there and he'll win a game. Again, somebody said today, I can't wait to see Cincinnati play Dallas because 10,000 yards.
That'd be a great game this year, actually. I would love it.
All over the field on both sides. That would be amazing to watch. That was Annie Agar today. But I think it's just that they have no identity to it. And now you go ahead and, like you said, you kind of weaken your defense, which we'll talk about. But, without Garrett Wilson, without, a quarterback to get anybody the ball, they just don't have anything. I mean, you can give Breece Hall the ball 40 times if you want, but that's not going to beat anybody. And when no one is scared of your quarterback, it makes it very difficult to, again, impose your will on anybody. And I think they're somebody said this the other day. They go, they're probably the only 1 in 17 that's actually worse than their record shows.
Yeah.
They're just not good. Again, how you put that team on a Sunday and sit down in front of it doesn't make any sense at this point. It's just a build up to a blowout every week, and it can't be fun to watch.
No, and it's even less fun to have to cover and figure out, dissecting the film on a Monday when I know I got to talk about them on a Thursday night.
Exactly.
Speaking of dissecting the defensive portion of it, Anthony.
Well played.
Yeah, and just like the Giants, the Jets defense looked at has pretty much the strength of this team. And obviously, when you have Aaron Glenn obviously a former defensive stalwart for the Jets organization is playing days. You bring over Steve Wilkes. Long story short, everything has gone south. I mean, they're 28th in the league in points allowed. At 27.6 points a game. They were allowing over 30 a game at one point early this season. The 25th is stopping the run, 135 yards a game. Defensively against the pass, they're still 12, but I don't think that's anything to brag about. And the defense has struggled to generate sacks. They won several games before they finally got a turnover. This Jet team has just been a disaster on both sides of the football, but particularly when you look at the defense, and that was supposed to be one of the strengths of this team. Joe, what help me make some sense of what the hell was I watching on this side of football the first 7 weeks of this campaign? Because if you told me there was if you put on the movie Little Giants and showed me Becky Icebox playing defense and making a stick hit, I would have said to myself, okay, that's kind of how you need to tackle someone. I don't know what the hell the Jets are doing on Sunday these days.
Not living up to this, that's for damn sure.
I think
put that down.
I think it's, when you have a team that's offense is as bad as theirs is and can't do third down conversions and can't do all that stuff, your defense just on the field too often. And it's been that way for the last 5 years, Ant. We've talked about this, right? They're out there forever. And you just can't constantly rush a quarterback who's figuring it out and then runs the ball against you. And you're just out there for too much time. Again, they've had some talented people. They haven't had a talented group at any point. I don't think Steve will. Someday somebody's going to wake up and go, why does anybody think Steve Wilkes is a good football coach? Right? He was supposed to come to the Giants a couple of years ago. Thank God he didn't. And then he went and they made him the head coach of Arizona, and that lasted an entire year. And then he's gone to a few other places that he's failed at. So I don't think he's the right guy to bring in. And again, you can give Aaron Glenn all the credit you want for being a great defensive player and also being a good defense coordinator up in Detroit, but he had players in Detroit, right? He had a scheme that fit what they did. Now you bring him in and you say, okay, how are you going to remake this? And you give it to a Steve Wilkes to run, but their philosophies I don't even think match up all that well. But here you go, right? This is the beginning of what Detroit did, is you're going to tear it all down, and I'm going to bring in guys that fit my mold if I get a chance to do it. And, you can't really put this product out there every week and expect the owner to give you 3 or 4 years to figure it out. Maybe with all these draft picks, like I said, but now Evan Roberts said today, like, you're trading guys for lottery tickets. We have no idea who's going to be available in this draft coming up. You have no idea if these guys are going to be any good when they come out. You can talk about all the defensive players that you see in college, but we all know it takes time from when guys come out, unless he's one of the top picks in the draft. Rookies get hurt, right, Jay? Rookies get hurt. Mm-hmm. And so it's going to take time to build something from the ground up. And I don't see coaches getting or regimes getting that much time anymore to rebuild something. Detroit actually had some decent players when he took over. They made the trade for a quarterback. They did certain things. So if the Jets can do that next year, if there's somebody out there that they can trade for to get their offense to be normal, to be professional and find a quarterback out there. But don't forget, that's what Detroit did, right? They made that trade. That's what the Rams did. They got Stafford, which is what they needed at that time. And Detroit, thought he was an aging quarterback that didn't really fit what they wanted, their mentality. And they went out and got a guy and they did what they did. So I don't know how he lasts long enough to rebuild a team anymore. It's a very difficult thing to do. And they've never had a lot of depth. We've talked about that every year. And they still don't. They have one wide receiver who's now hurt, so they have no wide receiver. They have one running back who's all world class, all pro, but they got one guy. And that's it. And then as offensive linemen age out and get hurt, it just continues to go. And like you said, as Rabbi said, all of a sudden you're the New York Knicks for 15 years, or you're the Rangers for 15 years, and you can't figure it out, or the Rangers for the last 3 or 4 years. Cleaned house, got rid of everybody, gave Tampa two Stanley Cups, and they still haven't been able to figure it out. So it's not an easy task to rebuild.
Gave the Lightning 1 Stanley Cup and the Panthers 1 Stanley Cup. Let's be fair there in seasons. All right. So it's going to be the same type of question here when we talk about what to watch for the second half of the season. We'll talk about the coaching in a sec, and with the coaching, because this is a "what have you done for me lately" type thing, and there's no patience. So if Aaron Glenn continues on the trajectory he's going, I know everyone says, "Hey, Dan Campbell did it. Dan Campbell did this." I'm like, yeah, but you're not Dan Campbell, and you're not with the talent that Detroit has. That's going to be something that's going to look out for. But what I am truly looking out for, before I get to you, is the game of the year, December 21st, 1 p.m. at the Superdome. Jets Saints. The ultimate tank bowl is here. Get excited. I will be watching intently. Merry Christmas, kids. Joe, what are you looking? Joe, yes, bring your rally times in there. Joe, what are you looking for with the Jets in the second half of the season?
I know Anthony loves a good tank bowl, because the guy that wins that game, he always gets all over them.
Oh, yeah.
For winning the game, for even trying to win even showing up, trying to win the game. Again, I think Aaron Glenn's in a weird spot because, again, the product that's out there is so bad at times, and he's making mistakes.
Big time.
All these fake punts so you can take a knee and calling timeouts at the wrong time. So he's not showing him. And again, he has to learn. So you have to be a little bit patient with that kind of stuff. But maybe he doesn't have the staff around him yet either, although he got to pick him. He needs to have a staff there that understands all the stuff and can help him with these things. You can't make that decision. And I know he's a tough guy. It's going to be my way or the highway. And he's probably that way with his coaching staff. But when you do things like that to end a half, where you call a timeout, fake a punt, and then take a knee, and your star players are all coming after you, and you have to kind of fake it going, oh, he's just excited because, he's really competitive. And you go, yeah, well, hopefully everybody on the team's competitive, coach. That's what you're playing. You're playing football in the National Football League. Hopefully they're all competitive and they want to see a different result. I think he gets, I don't think that should even be a conversation of him lasting the year or him getting fired at the end of the year. I really don't. I think because again, what's the alternative at this point? Are you going to start fresh with another new coach, another new GM with all these draft picks? Like there has to be hopefully this week, and Jay, you can kind of time on this. Hopefully this week, these changes were made with a plan for the future, not just
you hope, right?
Somebody called and said they'd give us 2 first, and he goes, yeah, do it. Go ahead. Like hopefully there was some thought process into salary cap, into picks, into who's going to be available, into what we're looking for, into free agency. Hopefully somebody in the building is doing that as a plan.
Yeah.
And it just happened to fit in that, hey, if we can trade these guys and get these picks, and it worked out that they did, fantastic. Now you move to the next phase of that, which is scouting the rest of the league for free agents and having all your scouts go to every college game they can possibly go to find that diamond in the rough in the second round, third round, fourth round, fifth round that will improve your team without costing you a bunch of money. I hope that that's what's going on. If not, then again, you're going to wind up with a whole new group of coaches and GMs and stuff. So,
yeah. The thing that's interesting to me, and I mean, I said this on the show. I was concerned with his choice of offensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. Tanner Ekstrand may be a smart guy, may have a high football IQ. Guy's never been a play caller, never been a coordinator. That kind of concerned me. Muji is a first-time GM. On paper, the moves he's made have potential, but these trades are only going to net out. I mean, people can grade them, based on, the type of draft capital they got back and the cap money that they save to be able to use towards, who they're going to wind up drafting, who they can bring in as free agents that might fill holes and improve the roster at, positions that have holes. The only way these trades are going to net be worth whatever people are grading them in the media is based on who they use those picks on come April and whether those picks pan out the way Gardner, Williams, and Garrett Wilson have.
Yeah. No, I think it's, again, he's in a weird spot because, look, Justin Fields isn't getting any better. The whole story with Aaron Rodgers, which now makes no sense at all, that he didn't even want to talk to him. And, like, again, I don't believe anything Aaron said, but if Aaron's telling the truth for that story, for him to fly in from California so the guy could say, oh, we want to know how you want it announced that we released you. I could have done this on the phone if you could have just, because I don't care what you say, and again, it showed that he knew nothing about Aaron Rodgers, because you would know that about Aaron Rodgers, that he doesn't care what the Jets say, because he's going to make up his own narrative about how this is all going to work. And he's going to go to the team that he wants to go to, like he did with you guys. He's going to wait as long as he can. Like, you knew all that was going to happen. All he had to say is, hey, if we keep you here, will you be a training camp, and will you buy into what I'm trying to sell here? And, and here's your offensive coordinator. You guys have a conversation for a couple of days, figure this out. For you to walk in and go, oh, Hall of Fame quarterback, yeah, we're going to go in a different direction. and you wind up with Justin Fields. Like, you didn't wind up, even if you had wound up with Russell Wilson, you could say, hey, the guy's done something at least, right? You could have used that mentality of, I didn't watch him play last year in Pittsburgh, so I'm stupid, but he's won a Super Bowl. Like, he's played at a high level. Maybe he can bring something to the table.
Yeah.
You wound up with Justin Fields, and that's just not going to, and no backup either. I mean, you wound up with the same backup you had. So it doesn't make any sense. So I don't know. Again, you'd have to be in the building and find out what that plan is, and if there is one. If it's an empty piece of paper, then they're in trouble.
I think I know what the plan is. Getting out of the New York locals and getting into more segments. So
that's our plan, not their plan. That's
no, this is our plan, and this is the plan I'm going to right now. So everybody, come over, open the door. There's actual playoff hopeful teams on this side of the door. Let's go around the league. All right, so we're going to talk about 2 surprising teams and 2 disappointing teams, one of each in each of the conferences. And while these are opinions, you'd be hard-pressed to disagree with some of them. All right, now for some patting on the back. Mayday, mayday, mayday. Jay, the AFC surprise team, is one you looked on on our preview show.
Yeah, and that's the New England Patriots. And when I picked them as the AFC team most likely to improve back in September on our kickoff show, I thought that between new head coach Mike Vrabel, new/old offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels, along with an easier schedule, improving from 4-13 each of the last 2 years to 7-10 this season seemed possible, even reasonable. But there was no universe in the multiverse where I thought New England would hit that 7-win mark by midseason, let alone be atop the AFC East at 7-2, tied for the AFC's best record, with a road win over Buffalo and second-year quarterback Drake May being a legit part of the MVP conversation. To say that May has taken the second-year leap would be an understatement. Last season, as a rookie, May put up a Pro Bowl caliber numbers, completing 66.6% of his passes, 2,276 yards, 6.7 an attempt, 15 touchdowns against 10 picks, and an 88.1 passer rating in the 13 games he played after taking over as the starter in Week 6. So far, this season, in terms of the standard/basic stats, May is first in the incompletion percentage, 74.1. Fourth in yards, 2,285, which means he's already topped his last season total. 10th in average yards passing per game, 253.9. Tied for third in touchdown passes, 17 with 4 others. Third in yards per attempt, 9 flat. Second in passer rating, 116.9. In terms of advanced next-gen type stats, he's third in total EPA, fourth in EPA per play, second in EPA per pass, seventh in success rate, and he's done all of this with a leading rusher who is 39th in the NFL with just 283 yards total, 48th in yards per game, and a leading receiver who is 16th in receptions, 22nd in yards receiving, and 42nd in receiving yards per game. Now, Josh McDaniel has done a really good job of adjusting his scheme and game plans to what May does best and puts the talent around him in position to succeed. The Patriots' offense, in terms of standard and basic stats, is in the top 10 in points per game, third down conversion, and are in top half of the NFL in yards per play, score percentage, points per drive. They could stand to improve their reds in the red zone. Their 57.6% touchdown percentage is just 17th. In terms of advanced next-gen type stats, the Patriots offense is 7th in total EPA, 8th in EPA per play, 3rd in EPA per pass, 8th in average depth of target, despite ranking just 14th in success rate and 28th in EPA per rush. The defense, it's been solid. They're number 1 in the NFL in rushing defense. They allow just 75 yards per game, and the 3.6 yards per carry they allow is tied for 2nd in the league. They're 5th in the NFL in scoring defense and points per drive allowed. They allow third down conversions at just 33.7%. That's 4th best. Where they have struggled is in the red zone. The 20 attempts they've allowed is tied for the 3rd fewest, but they've allowed 15 touchdowns at the 75% conversion rate. That's dead last. They've also had pass defense issues. They allow opposing quarterbacks to complete 69% of their passes. It's 28th. They're allowing 223.6 yards per game, 19th. They're 24th in yards per attempt, and quarterbacks have a 97.8 passer rating against them. That's 20th. Part of that inability to generate a pass rush. They have 20 sacks, tied for 17th. Their 6.19 sacks percentage is 19th, and their 16.1 pressure rate is 28th. The advanced gen type stats back all of this up. Overall, top 10 in total EPA per play, and EPA per rush, but middle of the pack in success rate, EPA per pass, and average depth of target allowed. Their second half schedule is, on paper, the easiest in the NFL. Their remaining opponents currently have a 358 winning percentage. Tampa Bay on the road and Buffalo at home are the only teams that are above 500 as of now, though Baltimore could be by the time New England travels there in Week 15. Otherwise, the remaining 5 games are against teams below 500. They have 2 against the Jets. They go on the road to the Bengals, and they are home for the Giants and the Dolphins. With the way Drake May is playing, 10 wins are very much possible. And as surprising as this sounds after the last 2 seasons, the AFC East is also very much possible.
So when we were talking before about you want to give every coach a little bit of time to develop, this is a situation where the coaching move was the right move, getting rid of John Mayo in year 1 and knowing what you had in Mike Vrabel, and it worked.
And his hiring of Josh Daniels as offensive coordinator, a guy he knew from their overlapping time in New England, but they didn't know each other after they both left. It's not like they're buddies and they were hanging out, talking football in the offseason. He knew what worked. He saw what McDaniels did when he was running the offense, and he's like, I got a really good gem. I got a gem of a quarterback here. I need somebody who can develop him. Give Josh McDaniels credit. Whatever he did in his year away from the NFL has kind of he's opened up his mind, and that was one hell of an offensive mind. He's kind of understanding that he has to do things a little bit differently because Tom Brady is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. You usually don't get 2 of those. But I got to tell you, he keeps developing Drake May this way. He may get 2.
I will tell you this, he's done better than that mentor of his who spent a year away from the NFL and then went to coaching and didn't learn a freaking thing. And that's just me. Anthony, stay in division and talk about the disappointment of the AFC with DJ Mike McDaniel and the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, it seemed like only yesterday that we were talking about the Dolphins being the team on the rise just a couple of years ago when they were challenging the Buffalo Bills. In fact, it was a key late season game that actually decided the division and gave Buffalo the division title and a home playoff game, while the Dolphins had to be the wild card team. Wow, has things changed?
My goodness!
The 2-7 by default they're throwing the AFC East, but I mean the AFC East, once you get past Buffalo, New England, is a bit of a dumpster fire to say the least. The 2-7, they've been marred by a sloppy play, inability to capitalize on any kind of scoring opportunities, a lot of injuries, particularly the key players like Tyreek Hill, who's done for the season, Darren Waller as well, who had turned into a really good red zone target, but it centers around Tua Tagovailoa. And here's the thing: when you are a quarterback like Tagovailoa and you publicly air your grievances and talk about the lack of accountability, you probably shouldn't jump to saying that when your play has not lived up to the talk. He is 15 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. He's actually 3 away from tying his career high halfway through the season of 14, which is back in 2023, when he did play all 17 regular season games. He is 23rd in the NFL in passer rating, and you look at the Miami Dolphins defensively, they've been inconsistent. The bottom seemed to have fell out a few weeks ago on Thursday Night Football against the Baltimore Ravens. Sorry, Rabbi, you go ahead and smoke. That was a mistake. But that game against the Ravens, it just seems like nothing went right, despite the fact that in the first half they outgained the Ravens by a 2-1 margin. But when things go bad, they get really bad, and as a result, the longtime general manager Chris Grill was fired the very next morning. And it seems like the Miami Dolphins it's just basically they're just killing time before they eventually go into another reset. And Mike McDaniel, at this point, he's just on borrowed time. I mean, I don't know
Mhm.
how things have completely fallen out the way it has with the Miami Dolphins, considering the expectations that they had. Think about this: since December 2023, they have lost 18 of their last 29 games. That includes regular season and playoffs. So that is a unbelievable decline for a team that looked like they were going in the right direction. They had the young head coach that seems quirky at times, but also a bit of a good football mind. But everything just kind of fell apart. And look, I love the special edition jerseys. The all black looks really nice. But at this point, when they wear those, it's for more like they're attending their own funeral because they have been really bad. And at this rate, the Miami Dolphins, it got to a point where they just may have to just hit the reset button and just start all over again. And maybe it's becoming a recurring theme when we're talking about teams on this show, with the Patriots being an exception of hitting the reset button. But in the case of Miami Dolphins, it's gotta be the head. It's gonna be a coaching change. You already swapped out the GM. What comes next with the quarterback? Because apparently, obviously, Tua Tagovailoa is playing for his job for the rest of the season because he's been madly inconsistent, because he has not played um up to expectations, and and the rest of the season is going to be a measuring of if Tagovailoa is going to be the quarterback moving forward, or do you look at what you can find in a draft or through free agency, and go from there?
The problem
One
with
thing,
Tua, though, Anthony, and I agree with you on that, is that his contract is such an albatross. That's a
big time.
lot of dead money
Yeah.
that you would incur, no matter how much you attempt to kick some of it down the road. That is an albatross. It's as bad as some of the buyouts that universities have been giving fired college coaches these days. The thing with Tua, you can say that Tua and Mike McDonald's offense are a good fit. I mean, he basically developed his offense around everything that Tua does. But the thing is when that's not working, McDaniel has not shown an ability to adjust and adapt. And yeah, they had a great first season or so in that offense, but the rest of the NFL caught up to what they can and cannot do, or what Tua is afraid to do and what McDaniel is afraid to let him do, and they became predictable. And once you become predictable in the NFL, it makes their lives a lot easier in their ability to shut you down.
Yeah, and another thing that I add to what you said, Jay, is, and this is something my brother was telling me. Talking about Brian Flores when he was close with the Miami Dolphins, and how he wanted Herbert and the owner wanted Tua, and we get into that. But what I watched this season is Tua has to stay on script. And I don't
Yeah.
know if that was something he ever grew out of from his earlier seasons. That when things don't go according to plan, he doesn't know how to improv, doesn't have to
Yeah.
make the adjustments on the fly. And we start to see that when now even he's holding the ball too long. He's been sacked 18 times this season already. The fact that when his first second reason out there, okay, what do you do? And he just looked like he hasn't really been able to figure it out. And now when teams, the defensive coordinators of other teams have finally caught up, he hasn't made the adjustment. And that's a big problem for the Miami Dolphins, particularly Mike McDaniel, because it's like, yeah, I can give you all the scheming and planning you want, but as a player, you have to develop some instincts on your own. And the fact that he's year 4 or 5 into being the starter, and he hasn't done that yet, yeah, that's a major concern. And yeah, the contract is that's an anchor around
Yeah.
someone around the Dolphins' neck. That I don't know how they're gonna get that thing off.
54 million next year, which is for a bottom 10 starting quarterback right now in the league. Many people can attest to.
Mhm.
Not what you want. And Joe, I think you and I have said it all the time with McDaniel himself. It's good to see a coach when he does well, and it's good to see how the morale is. But the true measure of a coach is how you get out of a rut. And it's even with Brian Dale. The rut has just not ended and has probably hit its lowest lows over the last few years with Mike McDaniel. So All right, Joe. Say something nice about a team in the NFC. I'm forcing you to change your tune and go with a positive surprise in the NFC.
Well, you and I talked about this, and I decided that even though they have Sam Darnold at quarterback, I would say Seattle would be the surprise for me at this point because I did not know how their coach was going to be. You know, when you bring in a young coach, first timer, you're never sure how that's going to be. You brought in a quarterback that has traveled around a bit. Not that he had a bad time in Minnesota, but he has been traveled around. And again, for them to let him go as quickly as they did when they brought in a rookie, that they're not sure how that's all going to work out. I was a little shocked at all that stuff. But this Jackson Smith Najigba is the real deal,
Ooh.
obviously. Unbelievably good wide receiver. They've always had a good running game with Walker. They've always had a great defense, which is just getting better and better as we go. They traded for Shaheed today from New Orleans. That should make them make their return game better, if nothing else, but also maybe takes the place of Cooper Kupp a little bit until he comes back from injury. That kind of makes you think maybe he's a little bit further away than we thought. But can you imagine that? They're playing as well as they are. Their defense is getting better. You added speed to your wide receiver room, and you got Cooper Kupp coming back. That maybe it's better he just plays the last 6 games. They get to go up against a Cardinal team this week that doesn't have Kyler Murray anymore. I guess they announced that they were benching him today for Jacoby Brissett,
who's actually played better.
But you have to go. It was against Dallas, so you can't put anything.
That's fair enough. Fair enough.
You can't put anything into last night. But again, he's much better. Kyler should figure out how he can get back to baseball because he's probably young enough. He probably could go back and play for somebody. Everybody needs a second baseman. But no, I think that they've done a great job of getting back to their identity. They've made some good trades over the years. You know, bringing back Leonard Williams and a couple of these other guys on defense has made that defense good again. And Sam Darnold, I mean, I just read something that normally would shock me, but, you know, Sam Darnold is in the MVP race at this point.
Sure is.
Along with Daniel Jones. Can you imagine that if they had stayed?
Who'd have thunk it, right, Joe?
If you were both in New York and you were talking about MVP races. But seriously, maybe going back to the West Coast, maybe getting away from, again, what they laid on top of him in New York has made him a better player, has freed him up. He's got a very good, you know, you got a Kubiak as your offensive coordinator. You know,
always a good thing.
Can't hurt, right? And you got this other guy who runs the defense, who is a defensive coach. So he can kind of leave. Again, we always talk about head coaches that can leave half the team to somebody else and trust them with it.
Yep.
That worked out, right? They got the right guys, it seems like. And the NFC West is tough. The Rams look very good. Seattle looks really good. You know, you're just not sure how that's all going to work out. But I think they were the surprise to me because I wasn't sure what the new coach was going to be. I didn't think Pete Carroll should hang around anymore either, but and I certainly didn't think Geno Smith was the answer. But to get lucky enough to bring in Sam Darnold and have him play this well has really turned that team around a lot. And looking forward to them doing some pretty good things in the West. It should be a good shootout between San Francisco and Seattle and the Rams for the rest of the year.
And the Niners and LA play this weekend. And one thing that's very interesting about how Seattle has done it this year, it's like Jackson Smith-Njigba, who is almost at 1,000 yards already, is just almost as reliable of a number one option. To get DK Metcalf off to Pittsburgh, and Metcalf has provided his own value to the standard of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yeah. But I do think that this is a team that has even more room to grow because they've had bad endings to their season. So it's going to be very interesting to see. Thinking all three of those teams, especially the Rams, Seahawks, and Niners, will all make it into the playoffs. But just a question of where, and I think these final few weeks of the season are really going to tell what Seattle can do.
And having the NFC East completely, you know, except for
decimated.
Yeah, being out of the playoff picture, except for Philadelphia, helps them get extra guys in, and of course because the North will all beat each other up, and
And the South is pretty irrelevant, although Carolina, for some reason, is 5-4, which is
Go
still
figure.
it could have been a team too in that.
The only thing that Seattle really needs to do is they kind of need to they need to start trending upward in the run game because Sam Darnold is really good at play action passing, and the fact that he's putting up really good numbers within in play action is astounding when you consider the fact that right now Seattle's running attack doesn't actually scare a lot of people. So if they can kind of get more out of that run game and become a lot more balanced, oh boy, look out.
Mhm.
All right. So my disappointing team in the NFC is it's funny because you mentioned Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones are both in New York. Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones were both on the same team 1 year ago in Minnesota in the same quarterback room. I'll give it. Daniel Jones came in after being released by the Giants pretty much late in the 2024 season.
Kevin O'Connell effect.
It is the Kevin O'Connell effect, but it's interesting to see when they ended up 14-3 at the end of last season, losing two of their last, or losing a bunch of games late. Minnesota got the 5 seed, then just got destroyed by the Rams in the playoff. It seems like Minnesota did the right thing to build around their first round draft pick in JJ McCarthy. It seems like it's the right call, but you look at the team otherwise, and I'll get to McCarthy in a second, but when you look at everything else that has happened with this team this season, it's not just the fact that they switched to a rookie, but the running game has been a little suspect. They had Jones. Aaron Jones got injured early in the season. He's back now, but Minnesota's quarterbacks now, you have Jordan Mason, a free agent from San Francisco who came in, but they've gotten to the quarterback a lot more, and the pass protection hasn't been that good. And that's one of the reasons why they're in this position to begin with, which is 4-4. Now they haven't been in a lot of third and long situations, but they don't convert a lot because when they face 3 or fewer this year, they've thrown 11 times and run 10. And if you pass in that situation, you don't get first downs a lot. You got a third and 3 or shorter. You run the ball. That's what you're supposed to do. But their offensive line has been decimated. Their rushing attack isn't great. And then their defense has kind of taken a tiny bit of a step back, but it hasn't been awful. But again, when you were 15-2 when you were 14-3 last year, you come back and you face the schedule that they have tape on you. They know what your schemes were. And now you're 4-4. Now let's get to the quarterback, JJ McCarthy, who they picked 10th overall in the 2024 draft, got injured in the 2024 preseason. That was a redshirt year for him. So technically right now you're dealing with a rookie. That is completely understood. First game, plays really well, comes really in the second half, plays really well, comes back to beat Chicago. Second game, he throws a complete stinker against the Atlanta team that is right now 3-5 and kind of going nowhere, and then gets the high ankle sprain. And instead of having a veteran backup quarterback, maybe like a Darnold, if you signed him for a decent amount of money, maybe getting someone more important, you have Carson Wentz there as a backup who has started with 6 different teams in 6 different seasons. And Wentz was fine, but he's more prone to interceptions. One thing at Darnold last year was he was very accurate. And it led to kind of a rough go. There were some good games in there. The game against Cincinnati, who, again, we know has a terrible defense. We know. See everything else that we've seen all year. And then you look at what you've seen, he's been up and down. And that's why this team ended up 3-4. And then he got injured in the Charger game, and he was done for the entire season. He was done for the season with an injury. But Pro Football Reference charts bad throws. And I know Pro Football Reference has been very much under the microscope this entire year. They classify that as passes that cannot be caught with normal effort. JJ McCarthy is 39th in bad throw rate. And that was before the game on Sunday. He had a better game. We'll talk about that in a second. Wentz was ranked 37th. For reference point, Sam Darnold's bad throw rate last season was almost 10% lower than McCarthy's was for the first two games. Now, after Wentz's injury, McCarthy did come back last Sunday, and he played more confidently. It took a lot of time to get through that high ankle sprain. I'm wondering how much of that time was a high ankle sprain and how much of that time was bringing JJ McCarthy in the lab and trying to build a monster that can come back on the field and challenge teams in the second half of the season. It did very well. The numbers doesn't seem like you're there. If you read the box score and you see 14 for 25, 143, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, that's okay. But he rushed for a score in that game, had that crucial third down conversion on a pass to wide receiver, Jalen Naylor, late in the fourth quarter. So you see when he came back, you have the readiness of a quarterback that is there to go. And now they're 4-4. Second half of their season does seem a little bit interesting, and a very interesting game against the 3-5 needed just as badly Ravens on Sunday. And you just look at the schedule and you're looking and seeing what Minnesota was last year. You knew you weren't going to get that, but you have Chicago, you have Green Bay, you have games that are winnable in the last part of the season that could get them back into a playoff spot. You just wonder, though, what could have been if this team kind of had a veteran backup that wasn't Carson Wentz going into the 2025 season. They could have been a lot better positioned than they are now. Right now, they're still last in the NFC North. So we'll see what happens. All right, Joe, we are going to let you go as we enjoyed your company here tonight. Joe, thank you for joining us. It's always a pleasure. We'll see you again as this season closes out. Joe, any last words?
No.
Enough?
No, always enjoy talking with you guys. It's been great. And yeah, we'll see how it all kind of comes out at the end. I'm sure I'll join you before playoff time. I'm off to do high school playoffs for the next 5 weeks.
Excellent.
And let you know how that all goes. It starts Friday night and should be exciting. So we will see you soon.
All right. Thank you, Joseph.
Joe.
Appreciate it.
All right. Good night.
See you guys.
That is Joe Tufaro, the official review podcast with myself and Joe Tufaro every Monday. That's said the socials, TikTok, Facebook. That's what we got there. All right. Last segment going on. We're going to take the same criteria that we talked about in the last segment, or criticism, whichever one you want to put on, and praise and bring it to some of the free agents who changed teams this past offseason, or as we always like to call it, old faces and new places. And that doesn't even include Aaron Rodgers, who is most definitely an old face. And I would think the craziness until I saw Tom Brady's comments today about possibly cloning a pet.
Wow.
Read it and look.
Yeah.
Okay. Same way we're going here. Jay, you start. It wasn't a non-criterion performance that we got to on Sunday going into here.
No.
Thanks to the team that is currently represented on your shirt. But Daniel Jones has had an amazing season and still deserves to be talked about.
Yeah, I mean, the actual epitome of, this segment would be Aaron Rodgers, who is an old face in a very new place, and he's playing football like whatever shackles the dysfunction that the New York Jets had clamped on him are finally and completely off. Considering this, before this weekend, the Steelers' offense was the reason they were 5-3 more than their highest paid defense in the NFL. But this past week's loss to that Steelers defense, notwithstanding, where he was sacked 5 times through 3 interceptions, the same number he'd thrown through the previous 8 games, lost 2 fumbles on strip sacks, and had the media reactivating old narratives from his struggles in New York Giants blue. No one was off to a better start in his new zip code than Danny Dimes, directing Shane Steichen's offense in ways former QB1 Anthony Richardson could never dream of, let alone execute. Even including his worst game of the season, in terms of advanced next-gen type stats, Jones is still number 2 in the NFL in success rate, number 4 in total EPA, number 6 in EPA per pass, number 6 in sack percentage in terms of lowest percentage, number 7 in EPA per play, number 9 in average depth of target. His basic stats are also still top 10. Number 9 in completion percentage. Number 1 in total passing yards. Number 2 in passing yards per game. Number 6 in yards per attempt. Number 1 and lowest percentage of those Football Reference bad throws percentage. And number 10 in passer rating. Now, prior to that loss to the Steelers, the Colts' high-octane offense was averaging 33.8 points per game and was operating at a historic level led by Jones, whose numbers through those first 8 games were MVP caliber. 71.2% completion percentage, 2,062 yards, 8.5 yards per attempt, 13 TDs against only 3 picks, and a 109.5 passer rating, along with 4 rushing TDs. He led that offense to 3.46 points per drive, which was the second most by a team in this century through its first 8 games. The only one team that did better, Tom Brady and Randy Moss, that Patriots offense back in 07. If the Colts were somehow able to maintain that level of efficiency for the entire season, it would be the highest mark of any team over the last 25 years. It fell to 3.19 points per drive after the loss to the Steelers, but that mark is still number 1 in the NFL. Look, it's obvious that Jones is in a much better place playing for Shane Steichen, who has set up his scheme and game plans to take advantage of what Jones does best. It's helped that Jones has running back Jonathan Taylor, who leads the NFL in rushing yards per carry, and rushing touchdowns, lining up in the Colts' backfield with him. He also has one of the better offensive lines in the NFL protecting him. That 4.36 sack percentage is that low because of it. And has one of the best tight ends in rookie Tyler Warren, who is top 10 among all tight ends in receptions, yards, target share, yards after catch, and total EPA. I said earlier in the season that Jones would inevitably have one of those horrifically bad games that would recall his worst days in New York, and that game has now happened. Which version of Daniel Jones will the Colts get in the second half of the season? The schedule isn't overloaded with potential playoff teams, but it is the 6th toughest, as their opponents currently have a .545 winning percentage. They travel to Berlin this week to play the Falcons. Then they go to KC in week 11. They have back-to-back games against the 49ers and the Seahawks in weeks 14 and 15, and still have 4 divisional games left, 2 against Houston, 2 against Jacksonville. Look, by the time it's all said and done, we'll see which type of gold the Colts got from Daniel Jones, Fools or 24 karat. But so far, through the first half of the season, which was the assignment, again, the loss to the Steelers, where Taylor was completely shut down by Pittsburgh defense, putting way too much on Jones notwithstanding. Danny Dimes is squarely in the boom category and worth every penny, or all $14 million, the Colts gave him.
So technically with 17 games, technically the first 9 games is still the first half of the season. So even if you put that in there, Daniel Jones is still far beyond expectations. One thing that's interesting to note that I forgot to mention when we talked about the Sauce Gardner trade. The Colts GM Chris Ballard is not known for these types of trades.
No, he's not.
They're kind of boom or bust. So it's interesting to see him knowing what he has and taking a real shot with this deal. And we're going to see what happens. But this Germany game is going to be very interesting to see and see how Daniel Jones is going to bounce back. All right, Anthony, when Pete Carroll came to Las Vegas, he got his prime candidate who flourished with him in Seattle. But all that's left is a hanging Geno. Talk about our AFC OFNP, Old Face New Place, disappointment.
Yeah, when Pete Carroll went to Vegas to take over the job, to take over the Raiders, he brought Geno Smith with him. Obviously, Geno Smith had success in Seattle, a couple of Pro Bowl appearances, had some really solid seasons. That's not translated and translated well with the Raiders. And this season alone, he's thrown 11 interceptions with a Monday league high. The most, at least through the first several games of the season, since Jim Plunkett back in 1982 when he threw 9. He's projected to finish with close to 4,000 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 31 interceptions. When the last player to throw 30 or more interceptions in the season was Jameis Winston, who threw 30 back in 2019. Because the way he started the season, he was 24-34 against New England and threw for 262 yards and a touchdown. And it looked like that the Raiders had got the Geno Smith that we saw really flourish as a member of the Seattle Seahawks. But since then, he has literally regressed back to what we saw when he was with the Jets. During that stretch where he was 12-18 as a starter for 4 seasons. Um, and during the Raiders 4 game losing streak, he was 82 of 129 for 814 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. And he had a quarterback rating of 30.3 in that stretch. But one of the things I have noticed too with Geno Smith, and one of the bad habits he's regressed back to, he's telegraphing his throws.
Yep.
And when I say that is, it's almost like he's staring down his receivers a little too long. And that was something we saw with the Jets when he was quarterbacking them, not kind of like being stuck on one read too long. And that was a really such a big part of his success is the fact that he was able to grow out of that. When he was with Seattle, he's kind of regressed back into it. Now, granted, the offensive line has been nearly as good. The running game has been even when Ashley Jensen in the backfield, um, Brock Bowers has had his health issues. So the pieces around Geno Smith hasn't been there consistently enough. But him as a quarterback, you can just see like some of the bad habits he's picking up. He's still now reads too long. He's telegraphing his throws. He's forcing passes that's not there. Um, and and Geno Smith was really supposed to be, if anything, that safety net bridge gap to what the Raiders wanted to build as far as a culture, and what Tom Brady, part of our ownership group, wanted to build as a culture as well. But you can really see not just his players taking a step back, but it's also brought the organization back with him a step or two. And then the rest of the second half of the season is going to be basically if he can pick it up and kind of get back to what he was with Seattle when he made 2 Pro Bowls, when he really was a rock solid quarterback. Um, but yeah, Geno Smith, he's also in this stretch has had multiple interceptions this season. He's had 4 this season, and he only had 8 in 52 starts in Seattle. So that just tells you how he is really taking a step back, not just as far as his stats, but what he's been doing when he's in the pocket, and when he's not seeing Bensley, when on the other side of the football, and it's really hurt the Raiders this season, and it shows by the 2 assist record and sitting dead last in the AFC West.
Yeah, I mean, Anthony, I literally, I just ran his advanced metrics. He is 27th in terms of all qualified NFL quarterbacks, minimum 100 plays under center. He is 27th or worse, out of 34 basically in pure drop back situations, which is what you thought he would excel in, right? In terms of total EPA per play, EPA per pass, he is 27th or worse. Success rate in pure drop back passing situations, 27th. Average depth of target, pure drop back situations, he's 33rd out of 34. He's not the guy who resurrected his career under Pete Carroll in Seattle.
And a third round pick they gave up for him. Also, he doesn't have Jacoby Myers to throw to anymore as he got traded today to Jacksonville. Apparently, you beat Vegas on Sunday, and then you take their wide receiver with them. Also, he does get Brock Bowers back though in full health, and we saw what a healthy Brock Bowers could be last season, and especially what he is already in that game. He caught 3 touchdowns, so we'll see what happens. I'm going to talk about both the NFC surprise and disappointment Old Fashioned New Place. And the reason I'm going to talk about the surprise is I'm going to build on what Joe said about Sam Darnold, especially now considering he's gotten even better over the last few weeks. By the way, do you realize that Seattle, one of the premier home teams of of the 2010s and the 2020s, Lumen Field, Quest Field when it was beforehand, the Seahawks have won 10 consecutive road games dating back to last year. And some of these games haven't been even close. If you watch the Washington game on Sunday, Darnold was excellent. 21 for 24, 330, and 87.5% completion percentage. Look at some of these completion percentages this year. In a win at Pittsburgh, 69.7 completion percentage. In the win at Arizona, he was just below 70. In a loss at Tampa Bay, 38-35, he completed 82% of his passes. The QB rating has been over 105 times this year, which is insane. And just take a look at what happened. On Sunday, he became the second quarterback in the Super Bowl era to throw for 330 yards, 4 touchdowns, with just 3 incompletions and no sacks in the game. That criteria only fits one other quarterback in the Super Bowl era, and that's Johnny Unitas, that way back when. So he has been amazing in the second half of the season. He started the game, by the way, on Sunday, 16 for 16 for 282 yards and 4 touchdowns. That is a stat line for any Giant quarterback over the last 10 years that you would be proud of, and he did that in one half. Sam Darnold has taken this offense of what he learned in the Kevin O'Connell offense and just said, I'm going to apply what I know into Seattle. And Seattle has upgraded majorly at quarterback this year, and I'm very impressed with what Sam Darnold has done. I don't think we expected a bit of a maybe drop-off going from Minnesota to Seattle, and now what we're seeing is the consistency that we thought we would get to see in New York as the number 3 draft pick out there.
Yeah, I mean, Rabbi, I mean, we talked about it when Joe was talking about the Seahawks, about the pairing of Sam Darnold with Clint Kubiak's offense. And I talked about, how well, they have done in play action situations. I just ran the numbers because I knew he was going to be your guy. So in terms of quarterbacks who have had minimum 50 plays in play action this year, Sam Darnold is number 1 in total EPA, number 1 in EPA per play, number 1 in EPA per pass. In terms of success rate in play action, he's 7th. Average depth for target, he's number 1. He is number 3 in passing yards in play action. And he is number 3 in touchdowns touchdown passes out of play action. He's just lighting up the NFL. And like I said, if they can improve their run game, they could take that to new heights. It's amazing what getting out of the New York, New Jersey area has done for Darnold and Jones this year.
It's funny and it's sad at the
Coaching
same time.
Matters, people.
Franchises matter too. And if you have a good franchise system, it's going to help. And that's going to get the right coach in place. So now it's time for one of my favorite topics as our last thing for football. Let's bash the Dallas Cowboys, who dropped 5-1 last
So
night.
many things to choose from.
Oh, well, there is. This was actually a tough one to choose from on a lot of different levels because there haven't been as many busts, I think.
No. On the defensive side of the ball, you got plenty to choose from.
You have plenty to choose from, but since we're talking about new old faces and new places, Dante Fowler Jr. moved to from Washington, where he had 10 sacks last year, 10.5, along with an interception and touchdown scored. Great veteran season, got a $6 million deal to do it in Dallas, and he was so disappointing they had to sign Jadeveon Clowney off the street this season. Now, obviously, all of this goes back to what the Cowboys lost when he traded Micah Parsons right before the season began. Put a lot of responsibility on the shoulders of Fowler. It hasn't been great. His production has been very frustrating, and it just hasn't really developed. And he's gotten a little bit better. Had a decent amount last night, but what he really shows is is part of a defense that is just awful. And I just want to give you the rankings really quickly. When it comes to total points this year, Dallas is second to last. Guess who's first? Guess who's last? That'd be the Cincinnati Bengals. When it comes to rushing louds, they are fourth to last. That's not good. When it comes
No.
to passing yards allowed, they are second to last. When it comes to total yards allowed, they are second to last. If you see a pattern out there, when you get rid of a Micah Parsons, when you say, oh, all we need is that one little thing in our defense, and we could just plug the holes here and there, and then you realize that your defense is this bad. And we've seen it in Cincinnati this year. We've seen this with Dallas this year. Not only is your defense so bad that it's losing games for you, it's losing games for you and making the offense pissed off at you. Like, I know there's been Cincinnati players have said that clearly about their defense. I would not be surprised if George Pickens, who, as Jay knows, is a very mild-mannered man who will never speak his mind on anything possible. I'm sure George Pickens is really happy that the defense is continuously losing and making his stats seem lesser and lesser as the year has gone on. So Dante Fowler Jr. is just the microcosm of what has just been a shitstorm of a bad defense in Dallas, and that's my pick there. So we'll see how that develops, but it's just not good. All right, closing out tonight, let's go into the Fall Classic for baseball because it was just 72 hours ago that we had a classic series end. But overall, 18 inning games, road teams winning a majority of the series, historic performances, a comeback in the ninth inning of a World Series Game 7 that, by the way, went to extra innings. The Los Angeles Dodgers and Toronto Blue Jays took the word epic and performed a This Is Spinal Taps, turning it up to 11 in the 2025 Fall Classic. The Dodgers took home the hardware for a second consecutive year, first time since the Yankees did it in the 98 to 2000 run, specifically 99 and 2000, after a 5-4 win at Toronto in Game 7 on Saturday. By the way, you realize that that's the first time that the Dodgers in a Game 7 of a World Series scored more than 2 runs, which is kind of unbelievable in there on their 7th attempt. It took a lot of other hits, but let's recap an insane time period of baseball from October 24th to November 1st that will be documented kind of forever. Jay, your final thoughts on this epic World Series?
Yeah, that's kind of what it is. Every Fall Classic is memorable in one way or another, but it's been forever since we've had one that had anything like the one the Dodgers and the Blue Jays just finished giving us. Some of the things that happened are actual World Series first, others are first and forever, and others are, to borrow a phrase from Jason Stark of The Athletic, just weird and wild. Mr. Stark gets all the credit for the tidbits I'm about to lay on you. Here we go. We had 2 extra inning games, including an 18-inning game in Game 3 that featured Shohei Ohtani getting on base 9 times. The first 4 by extra base hits, 2 homers and 2 doubles. The next 5 via the walk. First 4 of those walks were of the intentional variety. We also had a walk-off home run in that game by Mr. Walk-Off himself, Dodger first baseman Freddie Freeman, to end that 6-hour, 39-minute marathon. We had a pinch hit grand slam by Toronto's Addison Barger in Game 1. We had back-to-back home runs by Davis Schneider and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. of the Blue Jays to start Game 5. We had a complete game by Dodgers ace Yoshinobu Yamamoto in Game 2. We had a game end on a 7-4 double play in Game 6. And we had the first 12 strikeout, 0 walk game thrown by Blue Jays rookie Trey Savage, who had been in the big leagues for only a month and a half in Game 5. You want some context for how rare some of those things are in World Series history? Only one other World Series has featured a walk-off home run, a pinch hit home run, back-to-back home runs, and a complete game, and it happened 50 years ago in the classic 1975 Reds-Red Sox World Series, which had Carlton Fisk's famous 12th inning walk-off homer in Game 6, 2 Bernie Carbo pinch hit homers, Games 3 and 6, 2 Luis Tiant complete games in Games 1 and 4, and back-to-back Reds homers in the 5th inning of Game 3. That Fall Classic was also the last time a National League team repeated as World Series champions, and how Cincinnati earned the nickname the Big Red Machine. Here's some tidbits just for the Game 7. Yamamoto became the first pitcher to start Game 7 and pitch Game 6 and pitch in relief in Game 7 of the World Series since Randy Johnson for Arizona back in '01. When Shohei Ohtani led off the top of the first against Max Scherzer in this Game 7, it became the first one where a three-time Cy Young Award winner started a game against a hitter about to become a four-time MVP. Come on, we all know it's happening. Want history-making heroics? This Game 7 had that too. Dodgers second baseman Miguel Rojas became the first and only player on the list of those who have hit a game-tying World Series home run in the ninth inning of Game 7, while teammate catcher Will Smith became the first and only player on the list of those who have hit a home run in extra innings in Game 7 of the World Series. And speaking of Will Smith, how's this from a what's in a name file? For the past 6 years, the team that won the World Series had a Will Smith on their roster. Here's the list. 2025, Dodgers catcher Will. 2024, Dodgers catcher Will. 2023, Rangers left-handed pitcher Will. 2022, Astros left-handed pitcher Will. 2021, Braves left-handed pitcher Will. And 2020, Dodgers catcher Will Smith. Here's the final Game 7 tidbit for you. Only 4 teams have ever won a World Series the way the Dodgers won this one in a Game 7 in which they didn't take the lead until extra innings. The original the Washington Senators in the 12th inning in 1924, the Twins in the 10th inning in 1991, the Marlins in the 11th in 1997, and the Dodgers this year in the 11th. Toronto Blue Jays were the better team for most of this series. They outscored the Dodgers 34-26 and held them to a .203 batting average. They led Game 7 3-0 after 3 innings and were 2 outs away from their first World Series title since 1993. And somehow the Dodgers snatched victory from the jaws of defeat and became only the 9th team out of 32 to win Game 6 and 7 on the road in a best-of-7 World Series, to become the first team to repeat, as Rabbi said, since the 98, 99, 2000 New York Yankees. This wasn't a fall. This was a fall classic for the ages, gents. And for anyone who watched it all unfold, I have one simple question: how can you not be romantic about baseball?
And for anybody who watched all of Game 3 unfold, I can say to you, did you actually make up that sleep during the week is really the question. The answer is probably no.
I crashed after waiting 15.
Everybody should have at least cracked. It was insane. All right, Anthony, final thoughts on a classic.
Yeah, you know what? If an amazing series this was, you knew one way or the other, you was gonna feel bad for whoever lost this series. And the Toronto Blue Jays, look, 94 win season. They were 8 games behind the Yankees at one point during the regular season, and caught and were able to pass the Yankees. Defeated the Yankees in the division series, and was coming off a 7-game memorable series against the Seattle Mariners, a team that was knocking on the door for their first World Series appearance ever. And the way the Blue Jays were able to come back after that 18-inning marathon, you would have thought a lesser team would have fell apart after that. And the Blue Jays bounced back and won Game 4 and 5 and went back to Toronto with 2 opportunities to win their first World Series in 1993. What's going to hurt, what's going to stick with Toronto all off season is going to be the missed opportunities that they had in both those games. You think about the way Game 6 ended and Barger being, for whatever reason, too far off second base on a line drive that was more like it's going to get caught anyway, and not alert enough to get back and gets doubled off to end the game, where you have Vladdy Guerrero, who has been red hot in this series, on deck and a chance to win this World Series. But then you get Game 7, and the Blue Jays going 3 for 17 in the game with runners in scoring position. Yes, they got the big home run from Bo Bichette. By the way, I was on the subway coming back from a Broadway play, watching that game, watching the first 4 innings on my phone, and it just, it's funny because I'm watching the game and people are asking me what's the score, because apparently nobody in the subway had a say or a dog in a fight. But when you see 2 teams really laying it on a line like this, it's compelling baseball as the game.
Yeah.
And I had anxiety, and my team wasn't involved. But when they got the big home for Bo Bichette, And you're just thinking to yourself, the Dodgers chipping away, and you're like, okay, you cannot. They put up a graphic, Rabbi. You have to share this in the group chat of the amount of home runs that was hit by each team, and both teams that hit 8 home runs at one point. The Dodgers had hit all 8 home runs via the solo shot, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, the Blue Jays are getting the multi-hit, the home runs and runners on base, but those solo home runs is going to pile up at some point. And it just so happened the Blue Jays couldn't tack on, and you saw them, get on the board, and ironically enough, a solo home run ties the game and beat them in extra innings. But then you think about also that they had the bases loaded in the bottom of the ninth for less than 2 outs, couldn't score. Vladdy Guerrero just missed a sweet spot on the bat that would have launched a home run to straightaway center field. It just died a few feet short of the wall. You think about the great play um by Andy Paz, who came in, who basically laid out his own left fielder, but made a great play in the process. If he doesn't get there, maybe that ball drops in and the World Series is over. Um, but it just Robin Early Clementa would have been a record breaking 31st hit in the postseason.
Yep.
And you think about Alejandro Kirk, who's been so great all season, going the opposite field. And on the one pitch where it looked like he was trying to go the opposite field, he gets jammed, his bat breaks, and we're a serious end of double play. And it's just it shows you how much the little things in baseball matters more than anything. And the reason why the Dodgers all now the back-to-back World Series champions is not just because of the pedigree. When it matters the most, they're able to get the little things done. They never seem like they were under pressure under any circumstances. And Yamamoto was just spectacular. They just could not solve him whatsoever throughout this entire series. And the Blue Jays just look, I didn't give them a chance in this series, and they surprised me the fact that this series went the full 7 games. But the it was the missed opportunities is what's going to stick with them, and it's sadly going to overshadow what was a great regular season and probably one of the best, and arguably one of the best Blue Jays seasons they had in a very long time. It just didn't end well as far as the World Series, but you went from Will Bobichet's home run was going to rank among great Blue Jay moments. You talk about Joe Carter. You talk about Jose Batista's bat flip. You think about the walk-off in the 2016 wild card game.
Hell, George Springer in this year's ALCS.
Yeah, George Springer in the ALCS.
7.
And you go from that to heartbreak so quickly, and it tells you that the baseball, and it shows you as romantic as baseball can be, the baseball guys can be very fickle. And take it as a Met fan who watched Beltran strike out looking with the bases loaded.
That was still an LCS though, so one step below where you are.
Yep. Baseball's a game of inches.
And look, Luis Gonzalez 2001. How close was
that? That's enough.
It happened.
Gotta cut him off right there, Rabbi. Cut him off.
Well, it's funny because I'm going to do something even worse coming in, and I'm kind of curious when you think about this before I talk. It's funny how you can't really tell the game of baseball without mentioning what Dave Roberts did as a player in 2004, stealing that base that led to the Red Sox comeback, and now being a 3-time World Series winning manager. And the moves that he made, you just talked about that 9th inning. Antti Pahetz was literally brought in. He hadn't been hitting, but he was brought in as a defensive replacement for literally the thing that he did in that game. Miguel Rojas was brought in because Roberts had a hunch that he was going to get out of his slump. He hadn't hit a home run since September. He hadn't hit any home run. He only hit 2 home runs since the All-Star break. That was number 2 that went over the wall. Everybody on the broadcast was talking about, you got to worry about Ohtani. You didn't have to worry about Ohtani. He flew out with literally one pitch after Miguel Rojas tied the game with his home run. So that just speaks to that what Dave Roberts did was just magical. And I wouldn't say magical, but I would just say he hit all the right notes and did what a manager is supposed to do. He played his instinct, and that's why being a manager is one of the hardest things to do in all of sports and baseball, because you have decision after decision after decision you have to make. And that's one of the things. Now, getting back to the Dodgers themselves, if you didn't get them here, when the hell are you going to get them? Here's who they have important going out in free agency this year. Only 7 names. Michael Conforto, who barely played at all this postseason. Andrew Heaney, who was never really even in there. The only names that are important probably is Miguel Rojas, based on what he did, but that might be a decision that they'll have to make.
Well, I believe he said he's retiring. So
he said Rojas said he was retiring?
Yeah, I believe I read that somewhere, that he said he's retiring. So that one is out of their hands.
Okay. And Kiki Hernandez, who, again, you could just decide to get at the trade deadline if you don't sign him, because all you really do is need them for the postseason. So, right. And what the Dodgers did, just look at what Mookie Betts had in this postseason. Terrible numbers, and then they decided the best thing to do for him is drop him to 4th, punishing him and getting him going by dropping him to cleanup. And he had some big hits in that game 6 and game 7, because it got a 2-run single in the 3rd inning and to turn a 1-run lead to a 3-run lead for the Dodgers. The Dodgers had, so obviously, by the way, the Dodgers in that game had the second biggest comeback in a best-of-7 winner-take-all game, which is insane. When you look at Ohtani, who, by the way, is the second player in World Series history to have multiple hits in a winner-take-all game that he pitched in, joining the likes of a Dizzy Dean, by the way. Yes, Dizzy Dean. That's the only other name that comes in back
1934 Gas House Gang Cardinals.
That is correct. And when you look at the hitting, it was in the 200s. That's about what they did last year against the Yankees. They just had everything going fundamentally. And once again, in this postseason, they had everything fundamentally. This is the second, I believe this was the only fall classic ever in which the final 2 games ended on double plays. So they worked on everything defense. They did not allow any runs in the 5th innings of any game this postseason. They didn't allow any runs in extra innings, which helped them win NLDS Game 4, World Series Game 3, World Series Game 7. You talked about Yamamoto. 3 wins on the road. Never happened in a postseason series ever. Will Smith caught 73 innings in this postseason, most ever. Max Muncy is now the leader in Dodgers history in postseason home runs. It's just insane. And when you think about it, this team can get better. This team, if they're hitting and pitching, come at the same time. And we've talked about the numbers with the pitching this whole postseason, but just to mention again, 17 starts, 68.4% of the Dodgers innings between Yamamoto, Snell, Glasnow, and Ohtani, a 2.55 ERA, 127 strikeouts, and Glasnow pitched in relief 3 times in this postseason. Every pitcher of that 4 got into Game 7 thanks to going into extra innings. 12 of the 17 starts that the Dodgers had lasted 6 innings. In the past 6 postseasons, which spans 58 games, they had 12 starts that lasted 6 innings or more. But the main factor is when you see all of this, all of the crazy shit that had to happen for the Dodgers to win this World Series, and really this postseason, but this World Series, because this is where they had the most taxing. It kind of reminds me of how the Yankees won their 2000 World Series, albeit that was their last World Series of the run, and they almost got there again in 2001. That's how dynasties start. When you win series, you're not supposed to win. And given to that guy on Sportsnet who basically said, "Oh, the better team didn't win this series," And Kiki Hernandez said and tweeted, I'm glad the better team didn't win this series. Imagine what happens when the Dodgers are the better team in this series.
Yep.
Let the dynasty
No.
begin in Chavez
Look,
Ravine.
I will say this, and you said if you can't keep the Dodgers now, when do you? Well, according to my watch, Major League Baseball has about 141 days to figure it out until opening
Yep.
day, which is March 25th officially. So yeah, the Dodgers are at the top of the mountain, and it's going to be if you can't beat the Dodgers when they're at their weakest, and we talked about during the trade deadline show that they didn't make a lot of moves. What exactly what they're vulnerable? Dave Roberts made all the moves, all the right ones, and now baseball is real simple. Who's gonna knock them off the top of the mountain? And we got it's gonna be an interesting off season, obviously with winter meetings and free agency and everything else. But I'm already looking forward to opening day. I don't know about
Hey.
you, but I look. This was an amazing series. I don't think I ever walked away from a game in this series. I felt like a team was playing not to lose. It literally felt like both teams literally left everything on the field, and it came down to a couple of breaks, a couple of lucky bounces, and yeah, that's baseball at its best.
And you know what? The Dodgers did what Dave Roberts said they would do. He's like, in his response to someone saying, to the comments, about the Dodgers are ruining baseball, he's like, well, why don't let's win four more games and really ruin baseball. Mission accomplished, Dave.
If that's ruining baseball, sign me up for more ruining, by the way.
Amen,
Yes.
That's
partner.
perfectly fine.
Amen.
Sign me up for that ruining. Well, the final votes have been tallied, and even though Florida is still too close to call, this election day for all the sports lines is off the air. For Joe Tufaro, Anthony Strait, and Jay Kaplan, I'm Stephen Rabinowitz, and I hope you did what I would have done at the polls if I still lived in New York City today, and just write in Jalen Brunson's name on the ballot. That's the only sensible choice, right? I don't know what other choices you would have. Anthony, I hope you did the same. Your only sensible choices are to visit us at facebook.com/on the sports lines and on demand at youtube.com/on the sports lines. And we also have a Twitter of free speech, Jay.
Yeah, please like and subscribe to those two and to our Twitter handle, which is at ONTH Sportslines, where you'll find a link to each new show like today's, along with tidbits and nuggets from the world of sports that we think are worth your time to check out. This week, I posted a link to the article by Jason Stark of The Athletic that I pulled most of my research from for our World Series recap segment. His Weird and Wild column runs every Friday all season long, and he did one for every game of the epic Fall Classic we just witnessed. His piece on Game 7 is very well done and well worth the read. When you finish it, I recommend that you check out his other 6 Weird and Wild World Series pieces. If you're like me and you're romantic about baseball, you'll enjoy them all.
God bless America. Sorry, I'm cheesy. We'll see you in a few weeks. Good night from On the Sports Lines.
Good
Yeah,
night, everybody.
everyone.